The story of today is one of the most fascinating stories you'll ever hear. It will teach you how to be smart and use your wit to escape troubles. The story is titled Juha and the Tyrant King. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. Said that there was a sultan in an Arab country named Sultan Suleiman. This sultan was unjust and was known for his love of food. So one day, he decided to organize a cooking competition in the city he ruled. This competition was in the form of a cookbook that collected all the delicious recipes. He ordered his minister to give a cash reward to every person who came up with a new and successful recipe. So people started to rush to the guards of Sultan Suleiman to give them the recipes. Juha heard about the competition and said to himself, "Why don't I invent a recipe and give it to the Sultan's guards and get a reward? This is a simple thing." So he went to the official in charge of collecting the recipes and told him that he would give him. He described garlic with honey, so the person in charge asked him to dictate it to him so he could write it in the cookbook. Juha said, "First, you will peel a head of garlic, then chop it finely. After that, you will put it in the honey, mix it well, and eat it." The person in charge wrote Juha's recipe that he had dictated to him without adding or subtracting anything. After several days, the book was full, so the person in charge handed it in to Sultan Suleiman, who in turn gave it to his cook and ordered him to cook him a recipe from it every day. If he liked the dish, he would reward its owner with a large reward. If he did not like it, he would punish him and cut off his head. The cook prepared what the Sultan ordered him to do. Every day, he would bring him a new and different recipe from the cookbook, until that day came. To prepare Juha's recipe, he crushed the garlic and put it in honey, then mixed the two together and presented it to Sultan Suleiman. But the latter did not like it at all, as its taste was very disgusting. He asked his cook who gave him this recipe, and he replied and told him that the recipe was recorded in the book in the name of a man named Juha. The Sultan became angry and ordered his guards imprisoned the cook and brought this man called Juha here. Juha was walking with his donkey on the road leading to his house, so the guards stopped him and took him and his donkey. He asked them what they wanted from him, and they replied that Sultan Suleiman wanted to talk to him about an important matter. Juha was happy and said to himself, "Certainly, my recipe has impressed you very much, and you will see." When they arrived at the palace, they found the Sultan. While he was asleep, Juha asked the chief guard to wake him up, as he was eager to receive his reward. However, the chief guard refused and told him that no one dared to wake him up, and that he should wait here at the door of his room until he woke up. Juha surrendered to the order, but suddenly his donkey brayed. So the Sultan woke up terrified and shouted at his servants, "What is this?" The sound came from where? They answered him while they were afraid that it was the sound of Juha's donkey, and that Juha was waiting for him in front of his room's door. He came out of it and shouted at them again and said to them, "Why did you allow Juha to bring his donkey in here?" Juha, who was standing in front of him instead of the servants, replied and said to him, "My master, my donkey is not an ordinary donkey. It is originally—" The king was surprised by the Sultan and asked him what that meant. Juha explained to him that this donkey was originally a king, who had been turned into a donkey by the king who came before him because he disobeyed his orders, which angered him greatly. It was not appropriate to leave the king outside the palace waiting for a long time, so he took him with him. The Sultan was angry, so he grabbed his sword and headed towards Juha to cut off his head, but Juha stepped back and said, "Please, oh my master, forgive the donkey because he does not know that you were asleep. He was chanting your name and saying, 'Long live Sultan Suleiman, long live Sultan Suleiman.'" The latter said to him, "Who are you?" Juha replied and said, "I am Juha, a poor, oppressed slave, standing before the conqueror of evil." This Sultan calmed him down for a while. Then he said to him, "And you, Juha, do you?" "He knows the language of donkeys," Juha replied in the affirmative, "and that he only knows the language of donkeys and the language of humans." Sultan Suleiman asked, "Listen, Juha, I occupied your city and ordered my soldiers to kill all its scholars. How come they did not kill you?" Juha replied, "Yes, my master, because I am only a scholar of donkeys, not a scholar of humans. Perhaps you were the one who ordered the killing." Only the scientists specialized in anthropology. The Sultan was silent for a while, then continued his speech, saying, "But you will not get away with what you did, Juha." He ordered his guard to bring the plate of garlic and honey, and ordered Juha to eat it completely before killing him, so that he could satisfy his thirst for it. Juha began to eat from the plate, and he realized that its taste was very bad, but he pretended. It is very delicious, and he tells the Sultan that it tastes sweet, and that food has tastes, and if it were not for the difference, tastes spoil the commodity, as there are people who like a certain food and others who hate it. The Sultan was impressed by Juha's words and told him that he would be tested. If he proved that he was a real scientist, he would live a great reward, and if it turned out that he was not a scientist, he would be a seedling. Juha had no other choice but to agree to the Sultan's offer, who completed his speech and said to Juha, I will go back to sleep, and our meeting will be tomorrow after the afternoon. But you and the donkey will stand here in front of my room's door until our time comes." Juha answered him that his donkey loves to cheer for the Sultan, and if he does it again, we will say, and I will never know if you are a scholar or not. Also, you will not sleep peacefully, my master, because of his loyalty. The Sultan agreed that Juha should return to his house and return the next day after the afternoon prayer. Juha returned to his house worried and could not sleep all that night, as he had many nightmares for fear that the Sultan would kill him, and he did not know what he should do. Early in the morning, the Sultan's guards knocked on the door. They asked him to come with them to the palace because the Sultan wanted him now. Juha objected and told them that his appointment with the Sultan was not now, but after. In the afternoon, the commander of the guards replied that they were carrying out the Sultan's orders without discussion, and he had to do the same. Juha sighed and surrendered to the reality and had mercy on himself, saying, "To God we belong, and to him we shall return." Juha reached the Sultan, who ordered him to prepare for the test now. There were 2 scholars in the palace council who were hiding, but the Sultan was able to find him, so he decided not to kill them before testing what Juha had done. He asked the first person, "Am I an unjust and tyrannical Sultan?" He replied, "No, I am a just Sultan." The Sultan replied, "Well, Since you have testified that I am a just man, I will sentence you to death. Thus, I am a just man, and I will come to you with a clear conscience." He ordered the guards to. Then he took him and cut off his head. Then he asked the second the same question, and he answered that he was unjust. The ruler said to him, "Your answer is correct, and because I am unjust, you will die." So he ordered his guards to take him and kill him. Then it was Juha's turn, so he asked him the same question. And Juha answered to himself, "You are unjust, tyrannical, and evil." Then he answered, "You are neither unjust nor just. You are a sword that has been unleashed. God is upon us because of the many sins that he acquired it, and you are the sword of destiny, and the sword is neither just nor unjust." The Sultan was impressed by Juha's answer, so he asked him another question and said, "O Juha, most of the sultans of your country have names, accompanied by the word Allah, such as Al-Mu'tasim Billah, Al-Muntasir Billah, Al-Aziz Billah, Al-Hakim bi-Amr Allah, Al-Mutawakkil Billah, and other such names. If I were one of them, so what would you name it?" Juha answered with ease that he would name it, "God forbid." The Sultan laughed and said, "Are you insulting me, Juha?" He said to him, "No, my lord, God forbid. It is a name that indicates strength, power, and authority." The Sultan replied and said to him, "Okay, Juha. On the day of judgment, will I be in heaven or in hell?" Juha thought. A little while later he replied, "On the day of judgment, you will be resurrected with the sultans, kings, and great men, because you have left your names in history, and all people hear about you." The Sultan said, "Like who, Juha?" He replied, "Like Pharaoh, Nimrod, Karun, Genghis Khan, and others." The Sultan became angry and said, "Do you mean I will go to hell, Juha?" He said to him, "I did not say anything to you, but you can choose now who you will be stuck with as kings, or with the poor people." The Sultan was silent for a while and said to him, "Okay, Juha, we will now move on to the next test." The Sultan brought 2 brilliant scholars and asked them to ask Juha a question each. Juha was required to answer with only 2 words, and if it was more, his neck would fall. Juha agreed and replied that he would answer yes to each. Questions in 2 words, after all, the scholars asked him their questions, and the Sultan agreed. The questions were very difficult for Juha, so the Sultan ordered him to answer in only 2 words. Juha said, "I don't know." The Sultan laughed and said to him, "Okay, Juha, your last question is, if I were a slave and 70 in the slave market, how much would I be worth?" Juha said, 1 dirham, my lord." The Sultan was amazed and said, "But the clothes I am wearing now are worth 0 dirhams. Juha replied, "Yes, the specified price is the price of the clothes, because you are worthless." The Sultan became angry and ordered him to be killed, but Juha quickly replied, "My lord, you remind me of the story of the lion and the mouse." The Sultan said, "And what?" "It is the story of the mouse and the lion." So Juha told him the story that there was. In the forest, there was a very strong lion and a very small and weak mouse. One day, the mouse challenged the lion and said to him, "Come on, let's follow the other one. I am sure that I will kill you." "Do you know, my lord, what the lion did?" The Sultan replied and said, The lion must have pounced on him and devoured him. Juha said, "No, my lord, the lion did not attack him." Because he did not want to give the mouse the honor of being rewarded by the lion so that he would become famous, and all the people would talk about his bravery, and his name would be immortalized in history at the expense of the lion, the Sultan replied, saying, "Indeed, the lion should not diminish his value." So Juha continued addressing the Sultan. "And you, my lord, are also of great importance in this city and in the country, in the whole country, but I am nothing but a poor man who has no place in this city, and it is not right for you to equate your value with my value." The Sultan was impressed by his words and said to him, "Okay, Juha, I will forgive you, but I will be more courageous." He took him to a high wall and ordered him to stand on its narrow roof. Juha said to himself, "This is the Sultan. He's really determined to kill me, so there's no point in trying to escape. My death will be on him." The Sultan aimed his arrows at Juha, so he shot the first and it got stuck in his turban. He shot the second and it got stuck in the sleeve of Juha's shirt, and he shot the third arrow and it got stuck in the other sleeve. The Sultan was also impressed by his courage and said to him, "Sakaki, Juha, because you did not run away, I gave you a new turban and a new shirt instead of these clothes that were torn by the arrows." So Juha asked him to give him new pants as well. The Sultan said to him, "But I did not aim at your pants, Juha. He and Salim." Juha replied and said, "Yes, my master, but my pants got wet, and I am afraid I will catch a cold as a result." Sultan Suleiman laughed at him and said, "I really liked you, Juha." He asked him what field he was in. He understood, so Juha answered him, saying, "I do not understand anything at all." The Sultan thought a little and told him that he would appoint him as an imam. The Sultan answered him, "Yes, it is possible, because I killed the imam of the mosque and all the scholars of the city. And now I am looking for new scholars who do not understand anything, just like you." "You will accept, Juha, or I will cut your throat," Juha replied. "Yes, I accept, my lord, but I really don't understand anything." The Sultan said, "This is what is required." The next day, Juha went to the mosque and found it full of people. He was forced to speak to them, although he did not know what he should say to them. He went up to the pulpit and said to them, "Do you know what I am going to say to you?" The Sultan answered, "No." He said to them, "Then you are ignorant, and it is not an honor for me to speak with you." Then he led them in the Friday prayer and left. On the following Friday, he went up to the pulpit to deliver the Friday sermon. He repeated the same question to them. "Do you know what I am going to talk about?" They said to him, "Yes, we know what you are going to talk about." He replied to them and said, "Then there is no need to repeat it. Perform it." So he came down from the pulpit and led them in prayer and left. On the third Friday prayer day, Juha asked them the same question, so the people were divided into two groups. One group answered him yes, and the other group answered him no. Juha replied to them, saying, "This is a simple thing. Those who know tell those who do not know." So the people began to talk to each other, and chaos occurred among them, so they went away. To Sultan Suleiman they complained about Juha and asked him to remove him from this position. So Sultan Suleiman sent a message to Juha stating that he must give a speech and speak at the next Friday prayer because he would be present. Otherwise, he would cut his throat. Friday came quickly. So many people gathered, with Sultan Suleiman in the front, to perform the noon prayer. But before that, Juha went up to the pulpit and began to give his sermon, saying, "Do you know, people, that the camel does not have wings? Glory be to God who created it without them. If it had wings, it would have flown over your houses and destroyed them. So thank God and be grateful to Him for this great favor. Perform the prayer." Then he came down from the pulpit and prayed with them. After finishing, the Sultan thanked him for what he said in the sermon and decided that he rewarded him for this deed. So Juha was happy and said to him, "Finally, my lord, you will fight for my recipe." The Sultan replied, "Don't make me think of it, Juha, because my heart aches from it. Otherwise, I will change my mind." Juha quickly replied, "No, no, my lord. I want the reward. What is it, I wonder?" The Sultan replied, "I will give you a slave. From my slaves, his name is Shabur. He is a white and intelligent slave. Seek help." In your work, Juha took the slave Shabur and returned home. He was thinking about what he would eat, but there was nothing in the house, and this reward did not please him at all. How could he control it when he did not find anything to eat? In those days, the people of the city wanted to educate their children, and they did not find anyone but the imam of the mosque, Juha, to do so. By teaching them, Sultan Suleiman had eliminated all the scholars, so they went to him and asked him for that. Juha said, "Okay, but what will you give them in return for this work?" He replied that when the Sultan occupied their city, he did not leave them anything, so each one would give him what he had available, such as an egg, a grain of wheat, or a little milk, or some grains of rice, and so on. So Juha agreed to this and began teaching the children. But the people of the city did not give him anything as he had agreed with them. So he began demanding that they pay the tuition fees for their children, telling them that he had left his daily work in order to teach their children, but to no avail. And in the next Friday prayer, he opened the subject with them and told them. He called upon God to protect them from desires, and out of ignorance they believed him, thinking that the imam of the mosque was all. His prayers were answered, whether they were negative or positive, and they paid him whatever he wanted. So Juha decided not to teach children, but rather to work as a fixer. One day, a man came to him with a rooster and asked him to fix it for him. Juha was surprised and asked him, "Do roosters fix things?" The man replied, "Yes. My rooster used to always wake me up at dawn. Now he wakes me up all the time, because it broke down, and I want you to fix it for me." Juha agreed, and the man left. Shabur came in and said to him, "Sir, I am very hungry." Juha replied, "Me too." Shabur suggested that they eat that rooster for lunch today. Juha refused, but the slave convinced him, saying that they would compensate him. After Juha received his new job, the slave Shabur slaughtered the rooster, cooked it, and then he and his master Juha ate it. He took the bones and placed them on top of the rooster's feathers in a tray. The next morning, the man returned to collect his rooster, and Juha told him that he had not finished fixing it yet, as he had taken it apart piece by piece in order to find. The Chinese woman saw the fault So the man prayed for his well-being. He went away, and every day he came to him to get his rooster back, and he started to get annoyed with him. So he said to the slave, Shabur, "This man started to annoy me. What is the solution now?" Shabur suggested that he make a cow out of straw and paint it so that it would appear real, then put it in the forest and hunt any animal with it and sell its skin. And with the money, he would buy a new rooster for the man. The man was amazed. Juha thought of the servant Shabur, so he applied it, and they put the straw cow in front of the river. Then a big fox came and pounced on the cow, but the straw got into his mouth. Shabur came from behind him and pushed him forcefully. The fox fell into the cow's hide and locked it tightly. Juha took it and sold it. For the price, he bought a rooster similar to the rooster that he and Shabur had eaten, and returned it to the man who... He was very happy with it. And so Juha went to the forest every day and hunted animals and then sold them. He opened a shop in the city market and began to buy and sell animals. His business flourished, and he collected a lot of money, but Shabur robbed him while he was sleeping and ran away to a place that no one knew. So he searched. Juha looked for him everywhere, but to no avail. He did not find him, so he cried a lot and decided to travel outside the city. He would not rest until he found him and got his money back from him. So he went first to his friend the grocer and asked him for many things. He said to him, "How much money do you have, Juha?" He replied that he only had 20 dirhams. The grocer replied that it was not enough to buy all the things he asked for, but he said to him, "Since we are friends, take what you need and pay for it when you get your money back, and keep some dirhams in case you need them during your journey." Juha set out on his journey and found a caravan walking, so he joined it, and he took with him enough food, but he forgot. He took a large quantity of water and ran out of it, so he went to the leader of the caravan and asked him for some water. The latter told him that he had a large water skin filled with water, and its price was 20 dirhams. Juha was surprised and replied to him, saying, "Shame on you. The price of the water skin is only 5 dirhams. The man said to him, "If you like the price, buy it. If you don't like it, don't buy it. It's that simple." Since the caravan was walking in a barren desert, the heat was very intense, so Juha decided to buy it and started drinking very small amounts of it to preserve it. After several hours of the journey, the caravan owner's water skin ran out. Juha noticed that, so he went to him carrying sweets and invited him to eat with him. We know that sweets cause thirst because of the large amount of sugar in them, so the man ate with him until he was full. He felt very thirsty, so he asked Juha for a cup of water. Juha said to him, "Okay, I will give you a cup, but the price of 1 cup is 1 dirham." The man stammered and said to him, "You mean the price of the whole water skin, not 1 cup?" Juha replied, "No, and the cup costs 20 dirhams." The man had no choice but to buy the cup, and thus he got his money back. Juha had more money than that, so he sold several cups of his own. After several days, everyone ran out of water. Fortunately, the caravan reached a well filled with water, and they found someone selling well water. No one among them had enough money to buy water except Juha, who bought the well for a few dirhams. When he went to the well, to fill his water skin, and the people with him in the caravan, the owner of the well stopped him. He bought it from him and prevented him from taking any drop of water from him, telling him that he only bought the well from him and would not buy water. So Juha got angry and told him that we will go to Al-Kabi, and he will judge, while they headed together to the Kabi of that tribe, where the Kaffa had settled. The sheikh of that tribe was Al-Kabi, and he was very smart, so he said to the man, "You have two solutions, no third. The first is to get aroused by Juha's well and leave. The second solution is to pay Juha for the well that he rented for you so that you could sell your water in it." The man knew that his trick did not work, so he surrendered and left it to Juha with the water in it. H returned to the well victorious and took from it what he had taken. He needed water, and then he continued his journey in search of the slave Shabur in the cities, tribes, mountains, and villages. But he did not find him, so he gave up and decided to return to his city. And this time he also joined a caravan that was returning to his country. Suddenly he saw the slave Shabur in very loose clothes and surrounded by many guards and rubble, so he could not believe what he saw. His eyes pounced on him, and Juha pounced on him while the slave was screaming at him, "Shabur, you thief! I have finally found you." Shabur was surprised to see Juha, and the slave Juha said to him, "This is you. Juha is amazing." The slave Juha replied, "I am your master, Juha." Shabur replied, "Yes, you are the slave Juha." He called his guards and ordered them to arrest him, as he was the slave who had escaped from him, saying to them, "This is the slave you told about. He told me before that he stole money from me. Now seize him, and we will take him to the judge." When they arrived at the judge, Juha swore to him that he was the master and that Shab was the slave from whom the money was stolen. Shab also acted exactly as Juha did. The judge was very intelligent, so he asked the two of them to go to the window, and he looked through it, but none of them stuck his head out. So Juha and Shabura said, "As for the judge, he called the guard in charge of implementing the ruling of cutting off heads and ordered him to go to the other side of the window and await his order. The guard went to the other side of the window, so the judge ordered him in a loud voice to cut off the slave's head. Suddenly, it started to look like Shabur. He screamed and said, "Don't cut my neck, please." As for Juha, he was very calm. The judge knew the truth, that Shabur was the slave and his master was Juha. The judge protested and cut off his hands because he had stolen from Juha, who had recovered all his money and returned with it to his city. Sultan Suleiman heard that Juha had become very rich and knew his story, so he decided to. He watched him and said to himself, "Perhaps he might buy soldiers, establish an army and fight against me. I must discover whether he is a smart or stupid scientist. If it is proven that he is a smart scientist, then he poses a danger to me. If it is proven otherwise, and that he is stupid, then it does not matter if I become rich." His soldiers began to watch him, but Juha was certain of them, so he thought about. He found a trick to get out of this predicament. When night fell, he went to a well in which the moon's face was reflected. He began to cry and say, "My dear, you have fallen into the well. Do not be afraid. I will save you." So he went and brought a bucket tied to a long rope and lowered it into the well. In this bucket was a medium-sized stone that he had placed. Juha was inside, but no one saw him. Then he waited a few moments and started pulling the bucket. He pushed the bucket up forcefully until it came out and fell to the ground, and Juha fell with it. The stone made a sound, so Juha opened his eyes while lying on the ground and saw the moon in the sky. He said to him, "Thank God I saved you." The soldiers told the Sultan what had happened, and the Sultan was relieved and confirmed that he was stupid. Thus, Juha lived happily. If you like the story, please subscribe to the channel to encourage us to continue. Don't forget to activate the bell button to receive everything new. Like and leave a comment for us.